Hi there, it's Linda again with Erica Michaels Designs, and I want to do a little bit of a show and tell with some new fall, including Halloween, and a couple of new holiday designs. 5 altogether. So let's go. We won't waste any time chit-chatting. I'm going to start with the fall piece, and this one is called Autumn Cartouches. Now, particularly if you are into samplers and reproduction samplers, you're familiar with the term cartouche. And for sampler making, it's basically a little border or frame that is stitched to enclose a word, perhaps a motif, but oftentimes the signature line and information for the stitcher. So that's what a cartouche is in our little world. And so what I've done here is I've come up with some borders, and I've created 4 little smalls for the autumn, and they're just a word that says autumn to me in some way within a little cartouche or border. These are just little things. Great for your scraps of fabric and trims. I know you have them. And so there are 4 little smalls here, and you can see they are not very large at all. So let me just show them to you individually. I have Abundance, which is a very traditional acorn type of border. And like I say, you can see this is not large, easily fits into the palm of my hand. The next one is Bountiful. Harvest is bountiful, at least in good times. And so it's just a simple little border of leaves, trimmed up with a bit of ribbon. Again, small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. These are stitched on 36 count legacy linen from Picture This Plus. So if that gives you a sense of scale, too, obviously, if you like to stitch on 32 or 28, they're going to be a little bit bigger. If you like the high count linens, these are just going to be little itty bitties, almost like little ornaments or fobs. Here is Harvest. All of them are stitched in a pretty autumn color palette, these colors that we love, and they're all stitched on this 36 count linen. Great little bowl fillers, you know, whatever you might like to do. The 4th one I have done on perforated paper. This simply says fall. Again, a pretty little border embellishing the word. This could also be stitched on fabric, whatever you like. I like stitching on the perforated paper for some of these little things. This is 18 count white perforated paper, and I have taken some stamping ink by Tim Holtz, which you can find in craft stores, and I've just kind of dabbed, kind of like we did sponge painting back in the day, to age it just a little bit and give it kind of a more of an antique-y aged look. So you have 4. You have Abundance, Bountiful, Fall, and Harvest. Again, they're just little quick stitches. These are meant to stitch up quickly with little scraps of fabric, finishing fabric, trims, lots and lots of possibilities. So make these your own. And yes, it's the beginning of a series. I will have one for all 4 seasons and probably a few of the holidays. So that is Autumn Cartouches. Chart pack will look like that, all 4 little designs. Next up, let's jump to Halloween. Last year, I did a an exclusive Halloween design for an event, and now it's a year later, and we can make it available to everybody. A little background on this. Lots of us, and I'm one of those people, I love the collective nouns, and a lot of them, you know, about the animals. You know, a pack of dogs, or I think it's a flamboyance of flamingos. I mean, there's some wonderful terms, and I'm still trying to come up with just the right way to design around some of those animals. That hasn't happened yet, but I ran across, you know, the internet, a list of collective nouns for supernatural spooky creatures. And I thought, well, this is fun. And so I created this Halloween design kind of around that concept. Another thing to know about collective nouns is that another term for them is nouns of assembly. Now, the whole concept of these collective nouns goes way back, a few hundred years at least, where some of the nobility would come up with these names to make an impression, sound impressive to their friends, a little bit of a hoity-toity thing going on. But they were also known as nouns of assembly. And so this Halloween pattern is called a Frightful Assembly. And it's a collection of 7 different collective nouns or nouns of assembly for some of our favorite spooky creatures. So there's a lot going on in this chart pack. I've done an overall design as well as some smalls. And so let me show you first the larger overall design. And this is stitched almost completely in black floss. I used mascara from Weeks Dye Works. I used 3 skeins on this 36 count linen. Use whatever black you like to work with. And it's got some accents, obviously using white and also a bit of orange. So you can, you know, dig into your stash and pull that out as well. This is the larger piece. Each little section, it's got its little border, and then the entire piece, the border is a bit of a fence that might be the old wrought iron fences that went around the old graveyards. And so that's the border that goes all the way around the entire piece. In each one, we have a colony of bats, a rattle of bones, a murder of crows, which is maybe one that we might be most familiar with, a congress of ghosts, a festival of mummies, a lunacy of werewolves, and a coven of witches. That's another one that we're all familiar with. So each of those is here. And this piece, I've stretched the stitching onto a board like as if it was going to be framed, but instead of framing, I've attached some black buttons to the corner and then some orange rickrack around the edge here. And it's mounted and secured to another board that's just a print, just a cotton print. And the whole thing is tucked inside this wood frame. This is just a craft store kind of large plaque that had kind of an aged, distressed looking plank kind of background in it, almost like a tray. And I just painted the whole thing black so that it kind of disappears and you feature the stitching. So that's how this is mounted. It could be framed in a traditional manner as well, but that's just how I chose to do this one. So this is the overall piece. And in fact, in the chart pack, you also, for reference, just to help, there's a printout of the overall design to help you for reference, because obviously the chart's a little bit bigger and so it is printed on multiple pages. Now for the smalls. This is where I had a lot of fun with these wonderful bright colors of fabric that we often don't use for too much else, except for Halloween and some other fun things. For me especially, it's a little bit outside of my box, but for Halloween, I love using these colors. So I did something for all 7 of the collective nouns that I showed here. 4 of them I did as little smalls. So I'll talk about each of these because I've also included information for 3 types of borders. So can you see the difference on these borders? The rattle of bones on this wonderful purple linen is just a very simple single line of stitching all around the border. So this is the most simple, and I think, to be honest with you, this was a scrap of this fabric, and so putting a more elaborate border on it would not have fit. So it was a great way to use up this little scrap of the purple linen. The mummies, this border mimics the graveyard fence all the way around. The same fence design that's on the larger piece, except that it is just around the small. And here you can see the detail a little bit better. This fence has a little snake motif kind of worked into it, but that's what goes. So this is the more elaborate border. The actual design in each of these smalls does not change from the overall piece. So you can just swap these out as you like. The other option for borders is a simplified version of the fence. You can see here, it's mostly just 2 rows of straight stitching, and then across the top is a bit of the fence design. And so that's a little bit kind of in between the more complicated fence on the mummy's small, and then the really simple, just 1 straight line of stitching all the way around. So those are the 4 smalls. This one is done on the same linen I did the large piece on. This is a bright pumpkin colored linen from Fiber on a Whim. This is, I'm gonna have to cheat and look. This is from Picture This Plus and it's called Jewel. And this green linen is Weeks Dye Works Guacamole. Now, I have spec'd all of that and made those suggestions, but obviously you can pick whatever fun colors you like for your Halloween pieces on these. And if you have little small bits left over from other projects, it's a great way to use up these scraps. Now, in addition to these smalls, I also stitched 3 berries. Now, personally, I didn't feel like all 7 designs lent themselves to a berry quite as much as a small, but the chart pack does include a berry layout for all 7 creatures. So you have that option if you want to do that. So we have a Congress of Ghosts, and they're just kind of swirling all around there. We have the Coven of Witches, and also the Lunacy of Werewolves is the other berry that's shown as a model. Again, you have all 7 creatures with a berry chart if you choose to do that. If you don't want to make berries and you want to do all 7 smalls and vary the borders however you like, those designs come straight from the larger piece. The top treatments on the berries are very simple. There is a black base cap of black wool, another cut of wool that complements the linen, and then just a loop of black ribbon and a black button. So pretty simple top treatment on these. They're pretty fun. There's no way I'll be able to hold all of the smalls up and show you, but they do make a nice little pile for your Halloween decor. So again, this is a Frightful Assembly. You get the overall design. You get 3 border options if you want to stitch them individually as opposed to the larger piece. And you also get all 7 creatures on a berry chart. Quite a lot going on. So that's Happy Halloween, right? Next up, I'll stick with the harvest theme, or the fall. Let me set that aside. The next one I have to show you is called Thanks and Giving. Chart pet looks like this. This is an adaptation from an antique sampler from 1843 that belongs to a friend of mine. And I'll have a picture of the antique on the website when all those web links are available. The original antique featured this wonderful folksy tree, the squirrel and the deer and the birds. It also featured a lot of motifs stitched 1 over 1. And for this adaptation, I elected to omit the 1 over 1 motifs, and I still used a lot of them, but everything here is stitched over 2 threads of linen. It's got this traditional classic border all around, and I have added the verse that says, "Let our lives be full of thanks and giving." So yes, it's a nice fall harvest theme piece, but I think it's also something that's obviously a good sentiment all year long. It's also stitched on 36 count linen. That's kind of my sweet spot personally. I've used 36 count dirty teacup linen from Needle and Flax. I love the just kind of subtle, soft, neutral, but there are lots and lots of neutrals. You might have a favorite for this type of piece that you want to do for this. Again, I just love this folksy tree with its very stylized leaves. It's got some either acorns or buds of some sort. That quirky squirrel. It's got both deer down below. And then a row of small little plantings and another of the bird. All of these motifs did come from Eliza's original sampler. They're just rearranged somewhat to accommodate the over 2 stitching versus the original over 1. And I love the tree and the squirrel so much on this that I've added a little berry design in here for you that features the squirrel in this folksy tree. And it's got that same border piece. It's got some of the birds. And then I've just added the word blessed on one side of the berry. I just thought this squirrel and this little bit of tree deserved their own little piece. Another simple finish. Brown wool for a base cap. I cut some leaves, another circle, and a vintage button. So this one is simply called Thanks and Giving. So you have the sampler adaptation plus the berry design. So now we're going to move on to some Christmas. It's never too soon to start on your Christmas stitching, right? First, I want to show you the new one called Good Tidings. When we think of the song, "We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas," one of the verses or even parts of that chorus line are the words, "Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year." So that's what this is all about. The pin pillow says "Good tidings for Christmas," and the berry says "Happy New Year." So we have, and I've added, there's just some pretty borders. These remind me of poinsettias. There's a little bit of what you might think of as black work, which is basically back stitching, or using technically a running back stitch. And there are lots of, if you're not familiar with that, you can just back stitch, you can look it up. It's really a simple thing to do. So there's just some back stitching, which make real pretty borders on this piece, and a little bit of back stitching here in these motifs between the larger flowers. There's also, you see, let's see if there's a good place to show you this. There are 2 buttons included in here. These are hand-dyed buttons from Just Another Button Company. And that red button isn't part of a new line from them that they're calling folk floral buttons. So you can go to Just Another Button Company's website. I will have a link on the web page for this design to their page that includes a lot of photos and images about them. What it is these buttons, do you see there's just one hole in the center, and then there's holes surrounding that in each of the petals. So these are attached a little bit differently, and you actually you can come up through these holes in the petals with your thread and go down through that same center hole. And in my case, I did it with the gold and yellow thread, and you can create a flower center. Now I have to say, I got in a hurry when I was finishing, and I didn't do it exactly that way. I brought my thread in between the petals and into the center. But again, you could do that if you like, but I wasn't paying attention until after I had this all finished and completed. But you can also come up in each of these holes in the petals and then go down through the center, and you can really fill the center of the button and create a real robust flower center to the design. And so that's one of the buttons that's included in your chart pack. The other one goes on top of the berry. And this is the Happy New Year berry. So we say, and a Happy New Year. We're just repeating some of the motifs from the pin pillow. I've added a cardinal. It's a pretty berry. Again, just layering wool here. 2 shades of green. The red wool is cut in a floral shape that's reminiscent of a poinsettia with that yellow button and a loop of ribbon. So just layer, layer, layer on your top treatments. So we have Good Tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. Neither one of these takes a terribly long time to stitch, and if you finished some berries now or taken my berry class, you know that they're not terribly time consuming. So go for it. Lastly, I have one more design for Christmas. This one is called A Tree for Christmas. I have a collection, looks like this. I have a collection, a small one, of vintage pattern books. And a lot of them are filled with wonderful border bands and motifs. And I adore these little pattern books. They're just fascinating to me. And so I created this Christmas tree that uses a number of these borders combined into a tree shape. There's a big star at the top and a couple of reindeer all the way down. This model, obviously framed, is surrounded by snowflakes. It's stitched on 36 count Dove linen from Weeks Dye Works, which is kind of a gray-green, a cooler gray-green. It's just really a lovely color. And this floss, you do need a couple of skeins of this floss. This is Weeks Dye Works Chesapeake, which is a deep blue green, kind of like a DMC 500. It's beautiful on this Dove linen. This design would be pretty on just about anything. If you're doing these snowflakes, you do want to choose something that gives you enough contrast so that all these snowflakes show up for you. So mostly monochromatic, which gives you lots of fabric and floss combination options. So pretty. As another option to get you kind of, get those wheels turning, I wanted to do it on red. We all love red for Christmas. A lot of us love stitching with red on a white or neutral ground. I wanted to switch this up a little bit, and I eliminated all those snowflakes from the background, and I eliminated the base of the tree and simply stitched this triangle design of the tree itself. And I finished it basically as an oversized ornament. It would be, you could still tuck it in, you could lean it up against something else in your decor, you could tuck it into a large bowl or basket of ornaments or other things if you wanted to. I've simply trimmed it with some chenille trim, accented it with a pin up here at the top. There'd be a lot of things that you could do with this. You might even find a plaque type of thing that you could mount this on, but I really like it. It's very striking, stitched in white on the red fabric. It would also be striking, stitched on the red fabric with all of those snowflakes. So this is called A Tree for Christmas. I've gotten so I like stitching monochromatically a lot of the time. There's something kind of soothing about it that you can, rather than being constantly thinking, oh, I need to count here and change my color and do this and that. It's kind of nice to take a break and do something where you're still counting, still have to count, but you're not stopping to think about your color changes. And I find that kind of relaxing to switch things up sometimes. I will have more Christmas later this year, but for now, those are the 5 new designs. They are scheduled to ship to your retailers on or about Friday, August 15th. So let them know what you're interested in. I'm sure you've already been seeing some sneak peeks or other images online. Just let your shops know. They can get that information to me and we can get it out for you. Have a wonderful time for the rest of your summer. I know kids here are already starting school, believe it or not, but I want you to enjoy your fall, enjoy this going into the holidays this year without stressing too much. Enjoy your stitching. Be well. Thank you. Bye-bye.